Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce, bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
Today, the Chicago Bears locked in their 53-man roster. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined by Ron Luce. We are Bears on Tap. And, it is just nice to be done with the preseason, even as we enter this final, 2-week stretch here of just or I guess week and a half now. Week and a half on the bright side. Got a glass half full there. Week and a half stretch of no football. We have some college to hold us over, but this stretch is always a little tough, but I prefer it to the preseason. Ron, how are you doing this evening?
Q, I am right in that same boat as you. First off, awesome to be back. I feel like I've literally talked to you once this entire offseason, just with the chaos of On Tap and other things going on. But I'm doing well, my friend. I agree with you. I think this time of the year, it's now the anticipation, right? There is no, we got to wait for the preseason. We got to watch the 2s and the 3s. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I enjoy watching the 2s and 3s. I think the Bears 2s and 3s this year have been a lot of fun. They gave us an incredible game in that Kansas City game, right, with the comeback. Ja'Day Walker effectively feeling like he made the team with that final drive of the game. And we're going to talk about all that here today, Q. I agree with you. And Q, if you look at it even more glass half full, we got another week and a half until Bears football. But if you're just going by NFL standards, a week from tomorrow is the first NFL game.
That's right. That's right. A week from tomorrow, we got Kansas City Chiefs and Los Angeles Chargers, I believe it is. I'm excited for that one. I'm just excited for football to be back. It is a happy Wednesday because we are so close to real NFL football. You can almost taste it. But, Ron, today the Chicago Bears cut down their roster down to 53, made a few waiver claims. What are your general – do you have any surprises, any takeaways from that whole process there?
Ooh, I will admit I'm a little surprised, not horrendously surprised, just a smidge surprised that Duvernay was cut. I think Devin Duvernay's departure from the team was unexpected, not necessarily in a bad way. I think just because of his elite kick return ability that there was a potential for him to stick around. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm not surprised. And Q, I'm also not necessarily upset about any of the moves, right? I think there's been years past where we want them to keep a certain guy or they don't keep a certain guy, especially when it's a less competitive ball club. And you look at those waiver additions and you're like, ooh, what can they get, right? We've seen the Ryan Poles waiver class. There's been, 14 guys over the last handful of years, it feels like 15 guys that he's brought in. They bring back a familiar face in Jaylon Jones. I think that's a great move. I liked Jones. It was very sad to initially see him go. And then they add just one other player. And I think that's okay. Stick with the guns. You got pretty much everybody that you let go of in the initial round of cuts back on the practice squad. So that's huge. You get to keep all the guys that you had in camp all throughout that time. Keep them around in the building with the same guys. Overall, Q, I'm pleased. Because now we know what this team looks like for week one. And I fully expect a couple of small tinkers between now and Monday Night Football here in about a week and a half, as we noted at the top of the show. But overall, Q, I'm pretty satisfied. Do you share in that sentiment, or is there anybody that surprised you?
There were one or two guys who surprised me, but like you said, nothing I'm upset about. It was just kind of like they were toss-up names to me when me and Samir went through it last week. We had, I think it was 9 guys who were questionable, which we consider to be 50-50. 4 or 5 of those guys made the roster. So I feel like we hit them pretty spot on that half those guys made it. We had 7 guys as long shots. One of those guys made it. I'd say 1 in 7 that's a pretty solid long shot ratio.
That's a pretty good.
I think that we had a pretty good pulse on what might happen. The surprise really came from right now, like you said, got to Devin Duvernay and Patrick Scales, both, or not Patrick Scales,
Scott Daly.
But there is some strategy they're behind those guys. Like, both are vested veterans. Neither of them have to clear waivers. If the Bears are sweetening the pot for them a little to make sure that they can do something with their roster here and spend an extra day evaluating a guy or two, it makes a lot of sense for them to do it that way when you look at them adding a linebacker on the waiver wire and also rostering like Carl Jones. I don't think both those guys end up making this roster. I think one of the two makes it, and the other spot is for Scott Daly. Say there's another situation like that other spot might be for Devin Duvernay because they didn't have to clear waivers. There's no risk as long as you've communicated this with the agent to go ahead this way. So that's kind of the way I see those two.
That's a great point, Q, and I think that's I'll use a Blackhawks analogy here because that's always my favorite place to go is with Blackhawks analogies. In hockey, you will see around the trade deadline, there is a roster rule where guys have to be in the AHL at, X time, or they can't play in the playoffs. So it's a paper transaction, right? So you'll just see, hey, we're letting you know you're coming back, but we just got to send you down to the AHL really quick. So you report as of the deadline and you're coming right back up. Paper transaction. Don't leave the city. Go out to dinner with your family. Do whatever you want to do. Just don't leave. Just don't be alarmed when you see this in the news, right? I think you also see that in hockey right around the start of the season in years past where cap gymnastics had to happen for competitive teams. They would maybe tell a veteran, hey, we really like you and we plan on signing you, but we can't fit you under the cap until the first day of the year. Here's your professional tryout contract for preseason. Come get to know the guys, get to know the team and everything. You're going to be cut and then you're going to be signed after the first day. I think that's the exact situation that could absolutely happen. Now, let's be completely honest. There could be a world where they just said, hey, Devin Duvernay, we just think you're redundant on this roster. And yeah, you can return kicks, but we don't think it's that important that you're here. Maybe, maybe not. But I do think when it comes to a long snapper, especially because I don't think they want Cole Kmet being the guy every time or anybody else for that matter. I think that's exactly what's happening with Daly. Hey, don't go anywhere. You're going to be officially signed back here in 3 days. Just hang out for a second.
Yeah, don't put the house on the market, but
yeah. Don't be looking at other cities. Don't take other phone calls. And you know what, Q? To your point, right? You mentioned maybe that he's the guy because they need to evaluate one or two other guys. There's no better position than long snapper. These guys don't require evaluation after camp, right? There is no, can you snap? Yeah, he can fucking snap. He doesn't need to be at practice for 3 days. Give him a little vacation. Maybe goes to the Bahamas for a couple days and then comes back and is in full form. Who knows? But that's a great call out, Q, because honestly, I did not even think about that as a possibility, but that would be some cap gymnastics at its finest if that's exactly what they're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's I feel like we've seen this in previous years too, where they did something like this and everyone gets all I want to say it happened with a long snapper a few years ago where everyone was like, well, what are they doing? They're not going to have a long snapper, and they sign a guy back, and it's like, okay, well, that was all for nothing. But one other thing that, I can't say I'm surprised they didn't put a waiver claim in on one of these running backs. I'm surprised that they didn't get a guy after the waiver process with it. I'm not sure that they wanted to take on a guy like Audric Estime's rookie contract or, I'm not sure they wanted to take on those rookie contracts. Yeah, as minuscule as they may seem, I do think there is some of that goes on there. I am surprised that they didn't pick up a guy after the waiver claim ended because I would have thought with Roshan Johnson apparently hurt with the fourth string running back.
Travis Homer.
I don't know why I couldn't remember the name. With Travis Homer reeling right now, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't, but maybe that's a statement more to those guys' health and them being like, okay, they're more, owies than they are injuries. Then that might be the case. But I will say a part of me really thought we were going to see Isaiah Foskey in a Bears uniform. Being a Dennis Allen project at defensive end who he left in New Orleans didn't happen generally. I mean, I was a big Isaiah Foskey fan in the draft that he came out in. He has been absolutely awful in the NFL. I'm glad they didn't get him, but I was
Yeah.
I was preparing myself for them to add him to the roster, given some of the defensive end needs, which I don't know where they're going to go from here. One surprise that I did have with cuts was Tano Passanio.
Yes.
I was fully expecting him to make this roster. He's back on the practice squad. Again, that might be a thing where they're saying, we know he's going to be here and we want to get some of these other guys out there. Maybe it's the type of thing where they say, we don't think he has a lot of competition for a roster. He just moved into his new place here. Like, we're just going to keep him on the practice squad, call him up when we need him. I could see that too. But I do think Passanio is going to play some snaps for the Bears at some point this year. I'm just not sure when, because he has already been brought back on the practice squad.
Yes, I that was one I tend to agree with, especially because of the familiarity with the Dennis Allen defense and being just a guy that is a good depth player to have, and he's going to understand, the philosophies, and he's been in that room already. And to your point, I think it's a great move of depth, if nothing else. You got a guy that he's going to know exactly what he needs to do. There's no risk in bringing him up to the active roster. It's like signing somebody off the street, essentially, except they are fully involved and invested and understand what's going on in your building and in your scheme. And that's a great place to be. I think that's exactly how you should shape your practice squad, is with guys that you're confident keeping around. And maybe there's also a vote of confidence there, Q, to your point. Maybe they didn't feel like they had to roster him on the 53 because there was communication with them. Hey, look, you're going to be here probably at some point, but we're going to put you on the practice squad to make the roster gymnastics work. Maybe he was cool with, hey, I want to play for Dennis Allen and I want to be here in Chicago in this fun, exciting team. Like, I'm cool just hanging back and I'll wait my turn. Maybe there's some of that too. Who knows? But I think I agree with you. And again, kind of in the same wake of the whole Foskey thing, surprised we haven't seen kind of that, like, somebody's coming in that knows Dennis Allen already to really, fill that void.
Yeah, which that's really why I was so kind of expecting Passanio to make the roster, because of that exactly. He knows Dennis Allen. He's been with Dennis Allen for a few years now. He knows the defense. He knows the job, and he can do it. He's not surprising anyone with what he's doing on the field, but he's capable out there.
And sometimes that's all you need, right? I think especially in Dennis Allen's defense, besides Cameron Jordan, it was a lot of, I don't want to call them nobodies, but just guys that don't need to be the star. Just understand your role and do it well. Mm-hmm. I think he absolutely fits in that category of, hey, you might be our 5th or 6th best defensive end, but you're 100% a guy that knows his job and knows his role, and you've produced at a respectable clip as a depth player in the NFL. We'll keep you around. We'll keep you in the fold because we need those kind of guys over the long term. And maybe there's some adjustment and evaluation that still needs to occur with certain players at certain positions too on the D line, right? We might see more shuffling in that position group as the season goes on.
But Ron, we're gonna go position by position on this. So let's just go ahead and jump in, starting off with cornerbacks. And Ron, how are you feeling about the cornerback room right now?
I feel pretty good about the cornerback room. I mean, it's largely the same group as a year ago. Obviously, losing Terrell Smith for the season is heartbreaking because I think Smith is a player that we all wanted to see in this new scheme. He had a pretty respectable preseason. I know you and I sat on these airwaves, Q, and kind of talked about how he was perfect for the Eberflus defense, but we weren't sure how he would fit in the Dennis Allen scheme with an Al Harris as his primary coach and looking for that physicality and not just being a zone corner. I thought he lived up to the bill. So losing him does suck, but you look at the rest of this group, everybody knows what Josh Blackwell is. Everybody knows what those top 3 are, and Stevenson, Johnson, and Gordon. McLeod is fine, right? Depth guy, knows what he's doing. He's got experience, as you noted there on the right-hand side. And Nashawn Wright, I think, is such an interesting player. I'm not surprised he made the roster because of the amount of run he was getting during camp. So I think this shook out the way I expected, and genuinely excited that Jaylon Jones is back. I know that's really weird for, to be excited about a depth corner at this point in the process of the 2025 season, but I thought he was a guy that went in there, looked fine, and he's a good special teams player, and you need those guys. They're just as important in the NFL as they are at any other level.
The prodigal son has returned.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm Jaylon Jones. I think it's a solid ad. There's familiarity there, and maybe not with Dennis Allen, but with his teammates here. And I think that does matter, that chemistry being there, especially on the back end, trusting each other on what assignments you are where, and the communication aspect of that. I do think one of these guys is going to be gone. I don't expect them to roster 7 corners. So to me, that is probably between McLeod and Jaylon Jones. So we've seen Josh Blackwell and Jaylon Jones play out before. We know they like Blackwell better, right? Like we've been through that before. Nahshon Wright, I think, is really one of your only depth guys that you truly trust on the outside, or like truly like on the outside. I mean, I'm even skeptical to say that because 272 snaps in 4 NFL seasons, didn't play a single snap last year. I do have some like questions there, but he's had such a strong camp in preseason that's hard to deny. I don't know. I'm kind of, part of me does think that Jaylon Jones is in here to compete with Nahshon Wright too. That's McLeod, Jones, and Wright. One of those 3 might be out just because, man, where I really struggle with Wright is, and you saw this in some preseason games. He played well in the preseason, but the dude really struggles to turn and explode it. Like he is not an agile individual because he's so long and lanky.
Right.
That plays well on the vertical game, but if he's having to cut with a receiver, there are issues there. And like that's hard for me to look past. But you're also talking about depth, so it's like, I don't know. A part of me does think that he is not fully on the roster yet.
I think that's completely fair. I think too, you look at Wright and why they might like him. I think they value long corners in this system, especially because if you can scheme up a blitz really well and it gets home, as long as you can stick with the receiver in that initial part of the route, that's what matters, right? You don't need to stick with him for 6 and
get him off.
Yeah. I think there's ways you can scheme him to look better than he may have been, right? But that being said, I completely agree. I think McLeod, and even Jones are all kind of in competition with one another, and maybe that's on purpose. Competition brings the best out of players, and you keep enough guys around and kind of hint that we're not keeping all of you. You know, somebody's got to rise to the top and really take over. Because I agree with you. Even though Josh Blackwell's PFF grade might be lower than some of those other guys, way too important of a special teamer to get rid of. And with them keeping Hightower as the special teams coach, he's got some influence, I'm sure, on that decision as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And let's go ahead and jump on over to the elephant in the room, because we got Scott in the comments saying no left tackles picked up, or did I miss something? Are the Bears good at left tackle? No left tackles were picked up.
No, Dan, is it Dan Skipper? I've had 15 people ask me about Dan Skipper.
The guy who played 100 snaps last year. Yeah, he's really good. I mean,
he's a hero. The tough
part is or like Issa Pohl. They didn't get Issa Pohl. Like, I mean, I
don't even know who Issa Pohl is.
What's out there that we think is going to be better than what they have here is kind of my question. I don't think they're good here.
How much?
I think they have a real problem at left tackle right now, because I think Braxton Jones is still like maybe at best 80% right now healthy. I wish that he got more opportunity to sit, knowing how this all played out, instead of forcing him into competition, because I would think his ankle might be closer to 100% by now if he had. But like, I am concerned about the Bears left tackle spot. I do think it has the potential to snowball this season.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's somebody's going to really need to outplay everybody else, or they're going to have to find a way to kind of make the left tackle position look okay, right? You can, again, if you got enough quality offensive linemen, you can scheme it up. I think they feel good with the other 4, where they say, if left's a little bit of a weakness, we can find ways, right? On play action, we can send our back to the end to chip. We have 2 very capable tight ends when it comes to blocking and being an asset on that side. Maybe you have them supporting your tackle a little bit more. That being said, man, I look at that 2024 snaps number, And I get it. Like, ideally, you only have two guys that are taking a shit ton of snaps. Everybody else on the roster is just there because you have two good tackles. But I mean, Monangai, which we saw him, there was flashes, but do we really feel confident with him? I know people are hopeful about Ozzy Trapillo, but we still don't know entirely what they believe the plan is for him. Same, I think Theo Benedict. I'll tell you what, Q. A big shout out to a good friend of mine, Mr. Mark. His hot take was that Theo Benedict is going to start week 1 against the Vikings. And if that happens, I owe him a bottle of vodka. So I told him there's no way. But who knows with how this left tackle position is going right now, because we still don't even have an answer. And Ben Johnson doesn't have a public answer for the press. And we are a week and a half away from football. So I agree, Q. Big question mark. And it's going to be borderline kind of fascinating to see how that position kind of shakes out.
Yeah, here's how I think this all went down. I think they're all obviously said if we can get out of Braxton what we've got in the last 2 years, like hopefully a little more health, but then we can work with that, right? And there might even be some untapped stuff in there based on like what we've heard Roshar say and some of the stuff that, we talked about last year on tape. Some of the stuff that Roshar was saying about like if he can initiate first contact more, if he can keep his feet under him a little bit more, there is something to work with there. But the issue is he's still not healthy. So you're not getting what he was last year or the year before when he was out there on the field or to start the season. You're getting a much downgraded version of that right now. And like Ron, that sack that Caleb Williams took in the red zone, right? Like where Braxton blew his assignment.
Yeah.
How much do you think that's a factor of a bum left ankle and a guy just like trying like hell to get out wide on a speed rusher, just taking the gamble that, the other guy's not coming because he can't get beat wide like that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And you can see it. There's plays he gets beat on that even historically he wasn't really getting beat on. I don't think he's healthy, but I think he understands he's playing for his NFL future. He's playing for another contract. And
yeah.
Desperation will force guys to do things that might not be the best for them long term because they are betting and gambling on what's happening in the near term. So I am genuinely worried, Q, because like you said, if an injured Braxton Jones is the quote unquote best they've got, that scares me just a tad. Would scare me a whole lot more if we were still talking about a last year's looking offensive line. I feel a little bit better knowing that Tooney and Ballman and Jackson and Wright are all there too, but that's still a glaring hole that teams are going to try to exploit in game planning if they can, if it's not addressed soon.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting how quickly they moved Ozzy off left tackle once they realized this isn't going to work this year. And ever since that happened, I've had this thought in the back of my head, and Scott brings this point up in the comments, or maybe Wright goes to left tackle and Ozzy to right tackle. We haven't seen that Wright has done any work at left tackle. And I mean, maybe he has, and they've done it all on private days, but like that seems a little conspiracy theory, but you never know. NFL can get a little conspiracy at times. Personally, I'm sitting here going, the best thing for this offensive line this year might be that, as long as you can get Braxton back to full health in a few weeks. If he's not going to get back to full health in a few weeks, then I don't know. That gets really tough because look, Ozzy at right tackle is still probably not going to be good. He's a rookie. He's a second round rookie. He's going to struggle at points this year if he's starting, even if it's at right tackle. And then your question becomes, what's worse? Braxton right now at left tackle, or Darnell in a position that he hasn't practiced in since 2022, I think was the last time he played left tackle, and a rookie second round pick at right tackle. They're two bad options ultimately, and I don't know which one is the worst option.
I personally think, and this is something I noticed, so I've had a little bit of pleasure getting to watch a lot of Tennessee O-line play tape. There was a lot of Darnell Wright at left tackle. He looks noticeably different at left. At least he did in college when he last played it, than he does at right. Now, going forward, maybe next year, I could see that happening after the season's over. Hey, Darnell, it's time to speak left tackle, buddy. You're getting moved over, but now you put yourself in a big echelon for a huge payday because you are a left tackle. And then they tell Ozzie, hey, look, kid, you're the new right tackle, and it is what it is, and that's gonna be your side, and that's how we're gonna play this thing. I could see a world where that happens, just not this year. I think Darnell Wright would have been doing work, especially with a new offense, at left tackle back in April.
Yeah.
Not in August, almost September, when games are right on the line. So really, I think at the end of the day, Q, I think that might be next year's answer, especially if they can't get or they don't like the tackles in the draft. But I just don't see it happening now. And to Scott's point here, he asks bets on Joe Thuney playing left tackle. My bets are low. I think that would be out of pure desperation. But I guess we'll never say never.
I would expect Darnell Wright at left tackle before Joe Thuney. Let's put it that way. Because the Bears don't have a serviceable backup left tackle in my mind, unless Benedict comes out and can truly do what he was doing in the preseason against starters, which I have some doubts just because his arm length is truly like, we're not talking Will Campbell arm length. We're talking like shortest arms in the NFL at offensive tackle arm length. So like that becomes really hard to mitigate. And so like, I really like Benedict though. Don't get me wrong. The dude is a pure technician. He has beautiful technique out there. But like, I don't know. And maybe we'll find out at some point this year. Maybe we'll find out week 1. But if Braxton Jones goes down and Theo Bennett is not working at left tackle, you might have to play Darnell Wright at right tackle because Ozzie is a right tackle only. Or you might play Darnell Wright at left tackle because Ozzie is a right tackle only. And Ozzie is your next best offensive lineman at that point who can play tackle, unless you want to go to Karan, which is a leap of faith.
I agree. I think you spoke it perfectly, Q. And that's going to be an unfolding drama that, it's kind of fun to have some besides your usuals. How's this offense look under Ben Johnson? And, the big ones that are out there. It's nice to have a storyline that we get to watch and kind of examine and analyze and revisit over the course of the season, because I think it's genuinely going to be fascinating to see how they address the tackle spots this year over the course of a full 17 games.
And one thing that gets a little overlooked here, friend of the show, Brandon Thorne, did mention to us Ben Johnson probably runs the most offensive line friendly offense in the NFL, and that can only help the situation.
Facts. Big facts.
But let's go ahead and keep on the O-line trend and get to the interior O-line here. And again, I don't think any surprises. I thought Luke Newman had it, like, to me, if I were an NFL GM, or if I were the Bears GM, I should say, and I'm looking at this, Newman was a guy who I said, I can get him to the practice squad. There's enough interior offensive line, like, talent floating around the league at all times. I'm not worried about Luke Newman getting picked up on waivers. So I thought that was possible. He ended up making the roster, which he showed some nice stuff in the preseason. Like, I do think he showed good moments. I also do think he got worked by Chris Jones a few times, which is going to happen when it's Chris Jones. But I mean, there were enough moments of the grit that he showed where I'm like, okay, you can work with that with good athleticism and good know-how. Ultimately, I do think his best position is going to be center. I think he is a center of the future, but there's a chance he could play some guard. You also have Ryan Bates who can play guard, and I think Benedict's a guard. Karan Amagaji's been taking some practice rep at guard. So to me, the interior depth it's solid.
It is really solid. And I agree wholeheartedly with Scott here. Disrespectful PFF score for
That's what happens when you play a guard at left tackle.
Plays out of position. Hell yeah, man. Hey, and I'll tell you what, that's still a hell of a score for somebody that played out of position for most of the season. I don't really have anything to argue you there, Q. I think they like having kind of this slew of guys who can play all over the line. Amagaji kind of one of them. Benedict potentially one of them. Maybe Newman's a guy they look at and they feel like he could play a little center this year in a pinch if he needed to. God forbid. I'm going to knock on wood before I say this. Hold on. I have a wood shelf up there I couldn't reach. maybe he's a guy that could come in at center if Bates is either unhealthy or not getting the job done, or if obviously Dahlman goes down, which I hope doesn't happen. Maybe they feel comfortable with a guy like him stepping in there and getting some reps, especially when you got two big anchors like Dooney and Jackson on each side of him. I like him. I think he did enough to earn a roster spot, and I think they want to keep developing him. And maybe they were genuinely nervous that he wouldn't clear and make it to the practice squad. Who knows? So I think I'm okay with it. But again, one of those fringe guys where in a pinch or they have to do something out of desperation from a roster perspective, maybe they have to take the gamble and try to get him to the practice squad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. To me, I usually look at it as like you need to be a very impressive project for someone to grab you on waivers as a project. Like, I mean, we've otherwise teams are going to say, well, why'd they cut him? We don't know him like they do. Like they could have moved other guys. I mean, there are more. To me, you look at on the Bears practice squad, Jordan McFadden's probably more ready to play an NFL snap tomorrow than Luke Newman.
Probably.
And he got to the practice squad. So I'm like, if they're looking for a stopgap, there are better options than Luke Newman. And not a lot of teams are looking for project guards off waivers. That was kind of my logic there.
I think it is very sound logic, sir.
But let's keep this moving along. Let's just stay in the trenches. Go to defensive tackle. And this is pretty chalk, I think. Chris Williams, the only guy who was maybe questionable there, but like even that, I think they like Chris Williams. They gave a draft pick for him a year ago.
Yeah, I think they do too, and I think he's the type of guy now where I think his size and play style fits Dennis Allen's defense far better than it did Matt Eberflus' defense. So I think there's even more value to him now.
Why do you
building
say that?
on? I think because he's not the biggest guy, he's a little more agile. Right. There was a lot of complaints, myself included, watching Bears games where if he was in a D tackle, they got gashed up the middle. But in a defense like Dennis Allen's, where the stunts are heavy, there's a lot of moving guys around. They probably feel like he's a guy that maybe on second down and you have a second and long situation, maybe there's a chance with a guy like him that you get him as kind of one of those, head of the stunt kind of guys, making him the penetrator and allowing you to as we broke down on the Dennis Allen's defense show, right? The loopers are the guys you open up, but you need good penetrators. Maybe they see Chris Williams as a guy that can be that.
Yeah. And it doesn't really have a lot to do with Chris Williams, more about their defensive tackle philosophy. And like I noticed in the last preseason game, it almost felt like all these guys they weren't trying to get upfield off the snap, right? They were trying to read. They were trying to get first contact. And then I heard Javon Dexter at a press conference. I think this was last week, but I just heard it the other day, saying talking about what's different this year. And he said something about getting your hands into the blockers early being a point of contention. And that just makes me think that they're almost going towards you see a lot at the college level. And this would make sense for Dennis Allen's defensive tackles in my mind, where they want them to get their hands in and control the point and read as opposed to getting upfield initially. With how many stunts they run, especially, I think that their goal at defensive tackle more than anything is to just muddy up the line of scrimmage and just horizontally hold that thing, as opposed to Eberflus, who was so different. That was get upfield. Yeah. I think the thing that really made me start thinking this is I noticed how prevalent Javon Dexter's get off became again. Right? Yeah. He was slow off the football a lot, and I don't think that's just because he's Javon Dexter. I think it's because there's something being asked to these guys for them to read before they react, which was probably the opposite last year. I think they were a lot more react than read.
Yeah, and I think when you have good athletes at D tackle as well, they can do that and still make big plays, right? Grady Jarrett is very much an athlete. Dexter is an athlete. Turner is an athlete. Billings is kind of the only guy that's that true, I guess, original nose tackle, maybe you'd call him.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, that guy's still valuable because he's probably going to take up 2 blockers. So in a Dennis Allen defense, like you said, where, maybe these guys are asked to be more read and react, and you let the ends pierce their ears back, or blitzing linebackers or whatever, I think that's okay. As long as you're taking up bodies and securing gaps, especially on the inside, in case it's a run play, I think that's all it's about, right? Take your calculated shots from everywhere else and just make sure those guys are that anchor in the middle.
Well, and especially in a defense where, like, Dennis Allen don't give a shit about second and short. He don't want. I mean, no defense coordinator wants second and short, but Dennis Allen almost treats it like throwaway plays where he's just like sending wild blitzes or doing like not stupid things, but like he gets a little crazy with it on second and short because it's like he either wants to get back to 1st and 10 or to get them back to 3rd and 10. Like there's no in between.
Yeah, it's go haywire and just reset everything, or hey, let's go get a big play and maybe screw up the drive for the offense.
And Ron, you probably know this better than me. Would it be reasonable to ask NFL defensive tackles to run different stunts depending on what they're reading of run versus pass? Like if they're reading and they see the run play, so they go to their run stunt, but if they see it's a pass, they enter their pass stunt.
That's interesting. I don't know if so. Here, there is a difference between run stunts and pass stunts, obviously, right? I know you know that, but for everybody listening, like that's a real thing. There are specific stunts that are meant to muck up run plays, and then there's ones that are meant to open guys up to be free rushers to the quarterback. I think that's totally possible. I mean, that's that next level type stuff you need to be an NFL player, right? You don't see that shit happening at the college level or high school level. Like it's stunt's called, you run the stunt, and that's the extent of it. I can tell you, I see it quite often. I think there is something that could be said with that, because you also look at the way they built that room, right? Shamar Turner's an explosive player. He seems to be very gap responsible, smart. Ron Dexter, kind of the same way. Grady Jarrett, right? Your big acquisition, one of the smartest cerebral D tackles in the game. There's a reason he's been around for as long as he has been as good as he has for as long as he has. And Andrew Billings, I think, is kind of in that boat too, right? He's a savvy veteran. He's been around for a long time. I think you could ask that of these guys. Hey, if it's a run play, we need you to run your stunt, but we need you to get flatter and really focus more on being the penetrator and then just sealing up a gap as the looper.
Right.
Whereas, hey, it's pass. Okay. Penetrator, and then really get on that heavy loop. Maybe it also dictates who becomes the penetrator.
Yeah, that's kind of, because watching the Saints defenses, it felt like some of the loop decisions were always kind of delayed, right? It felt like it was kind of like they're hanging around and boom, that now they're trying the loop. They're not trying it right off the snap.
I think that's totally plausible, and it would make sense because, again, something I remember you and I talking about when we did that. First off, incredible episode. If anybody hasn't watched it, I highly recommend, because that was one of my favorite things we've ever recorded, Q. That was a blast.
Yeah, I think it's called Identifying Blitz Fronts Against Dennis Allen's Defense. If you look it up on YouTube, it'll be right there. All 22 tape we're breaking down. It was a great time.
It was an awesome show. I think because of how, like, you've even said it, right? They ask a lot out of their DBs. Their DBs need to be locked down because they get weird and creative with the front seven. I think this Bears team has the personnel to do that, right? You have Kyler Gordon. You have Tyreek Stevenson, who I think can still improve. Jaylon Johnson's one of the best lockdown corners in the league. Now you can have maybe you're going to get maybe a second and a half more of good coverage. So you don't need to get to the quarterback as fast. You can delay things. Maybe it changes how a linebacker fills a zone. Maybe it change. There's probably so much that goes into it that we just don't realize because we're not in the room. So I think that's an educated guess, Q, that might be spot on. It really might change just how a stunt is run, how a pressure is brought, who becomes the penetrator, et cetera, based on what's happening on a certain play. Maybe that's not every play, but maybe that's some plays depending on the situation.
And Ron, As I change to the next position, this I think is a good question from Scott. Is there any player from last year that was cut before the 53-man roster that made an impact on any team around the league that you can remember? Because I can't remember any, but my memory for this stuff is kind of I don't pay that close attention to it. So
Any player that was cut before the 53-man that made a huge impact last year? That's a great
or
question.
even any impact. Like I
don't know, Q. I'll be honest with you. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head where it's like, wow, glaring, like that was crazy. How did they let that guy go? I can't really remember any, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't really remember any either. So I think we can just move on from that. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, Scott. I'll do some research for you because
Reddy
now
Stewart was probably one of the names who he ended up somewhere.
Okay.
Greg Stroman.
Yeah, I don't think Stroman really went and played anywhere.
No. Kari Blasingame won a Super Bowl.
True. Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. I'm sad they cut the fullback.
Yeah, Reddy Stewart was the highest profile one amongst Bears fans.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think even just like league-wide. I can't even think of any league-wide off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Not just Bears. So it's a great question, though.
Some, but I don't recall. So anyways, keeping it rolling. To the edge room. They kept Dio Ingbo, obviously, Montez Sweat, Austin Booker, all three of those guys, no question there. Dominique Robinson just refuses to go away. And, I hope that it works out for him with the staff because every coaching staff seems to love him. So, and he's an athletic freak, but I'm not getting my hopes up for anything from him. And then, to me, Daniel Hardy was a little surprising. A guy I think might still be earning his spot. We know what he can do on special teams, right? He's an asset on special teams, no question. But the guy, he's listed at, I want to say like 240, which he's put on weight since then, but he's probably 250. And I don't know where that fits in this defense.
I think the special teams aspect of it alone is huge. And that's something that they definitely factored into that with keeping Hardy. But I do believe, he was quickly re-signed, Q, if you remember, right at the end of the season. I think he was one of the first guys that they pretty much gave a contract to from the jump. Again, it was a small contract, just a 1-year deal. But I recall, I think him being right around the same time as Josh Blackwell, if I remember correctly. So again, maybe that's the Hightower influence of keeping a couple key special teamers in the building, but maybe there is something to be said there, right? We said how unconventional Dennis Allen's defensive lines have looked. Maybe the unconventional. I'm trying to think of the word, Q. I don't think it's a proper word, but
unconventionality.
That.
Okay.
I think that might be something that Dennis Allen sees as an asset to his defense, and maybe they're content with him being the fifth option at the end spot.
So if they have like a joker role for Austin Booker, for lack of a better term, or like an overhang pass rush specialist, like edge rusher, like for Austin Booker, it can make some sense that Daniel Hardy is the backup there. So maybe that's it. He was a guy who I was on the fence on making this roster just because of that. He doesn't fit the mold of what Dennis Allen typically wants, which is the Dio Ingbos, the Dominique Robinsons, the Tano Passignos of the world who are, 270, 280, and just, really hard for offensive tackles to move off the football and really powerful when they're spiking inside to try to take out the tackle and the guard at the same time and clear a looper.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely unconventional in that sense. But I think you look at this group right here, I see a lot of unconventional names to the Dennis Allen defense, really outside of Sweat and Odiingbo. I think everybody else is kind of a freak athlete or a smaller guy that they need to find a role for and a ability to make an impact on the roster.
Now, Montez Sweat this offseason, he said a thing or two that has kind of made my ears perk up. And one of them was about, he was talking about he was excited to play in Dennis Allen's defense and that he spent a bunch of time this offseason watching Cameron Jordan tape. And that just made my ears perk up of like, 'cause I do think that's a role he can play really well. Cameron Jordan is a different animal, right? Like it's hard to compare any player to him because he's such the dude's pushing 40 and he's still doing the dang thing because he loves the game that much. Like
Crazy.
on the Saints, who have not been a fun team the last 2 years. But I do think that that's a role he can really do well, and if he fully buys in, and it seems like he's bought into what Dennis Allen's preaching.
And that would be huge because what we saw a lot of, Cameron Jordan was schemed up to get those free chances at the quarterback, right? And we've
Honestly,
seen,
yes, but not as much as other, like
sure,
Brian Brzee the last 2 years has been like their prime scheme candidate. The dude had like a 40 PFF grade, but like 7 sacks last year. Like, I mean, that is like the king of scheme sacks.
Well, I will say this about Sweat, Q, now that I'm sitting here and thinking about it. You mentioned a little bit earlier arm length, right?
Mm-hmm.
And interior guys are naturally shorter armed than tackles. Maybe Sweat's huge wingspan plays well to what Dennis Allen wants to do. And he says, you know what? I'm going to let you just bench press these guys off of you and disrupt from the middle. Because if we're getting to the quarterback, I don't care how we get there as long as we get there. I think that's an advantage, right? Because Sweat is big enough to compete with most guards in the league. And if they can find a guard mismatch that they like, Montez Sweat can have a field day in certain games depending on the mismatch. So maybe Dio Odedingbo gets a similar role, at times. I mean, again, the kind of the excitement of just what crazy shit is Dennis Allen going to come up with on this defense, because their front four are it's kind of a weird bunch, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fit those pieces together.
Yeah. Now let's move this along. Let's stay on the defensive end, and let's get to that linebacker room where one of the surprises to me, I can't truthfully sit here and say I know a ton about Carl Jones. I was surprised to see him make the roster, though.
Likewise. I really don't have much else to add there. I mean, I don't know what they see in Carl Jones that they like. I think everybody else makes plenty of sense. I mean, Edmonds and Edwards certainly are going to have their roles. I think maybe we see a little bit of Noah Sewell this year. I think he had a pretty good preseason. Obviously, they drafted Hypolite. They're not going to just move off of a pick like that right away. And we've seen the freaky athletic fast linebacker is an asset in the Dennis Allen defense. So I think that alone with the fit for Hypolite was the reason he was going to make the roster. But I agree with you, Q. I don't know much about Carl Jones. I'm surprised he's still hanging around.
And they went and picked up DeMarco Jackson as a waiver pickup. He was a Dennis Allen draft pick in New Orleans. Clearly, he saw something he liked. He was really just a special team standout in New Orleans. Has played 76 snaps in his 3 NFL seasons on defense. But he was a really strong special teamer. So, like, I do think a linebacker here is not going to be on the opening day roster. I assume it's probably Carl Jones, but like DeMarco Jackson also needs to show up and do what they want him to do for that to happen.
100% agree, Q. At least one of them's gone.
Yeah. And then at safety, I mean, safety was about as chalk as it gets. Just Byard, Owens, Hicks, and Brisker. None of these guys are really at risk. I had Hicks as probable just because I thought maybe, I had a hard time making Hicks a lock. Let's just put it that way. That's all that was.
That's entirely fair. I have no surprise here. I think this room and everything outside of depth corner was the secondary was one of the most chalk groups on this team, in my humble opinion. So no surprises.
Now, one note that I saw someone mention the other day, this might be the least safeties that Dennis Allen's ever carried on a roster. He usually carries five or like at least 1 or 2 more guys who can kind of do multiple things. So maybe that's Kyler Gordon this year, as has been intimated to. But like Dennis Allen played safety in college. His dad, I think, played safety in the NFL. His dad played in the NFL. It was either safety or linebacker, maybe. But like, so there is a lot, like, he loves the safety position. He loves to use them in weird ways. So this is a lighter room for him here. But like Kyler Gordon is going to be really interesting to see how he plays into this equation.
Q, you've mentioned quotes that have made your ears perk up. Probably still the number one quote that made my ears perk up over the course of this very long off season was that of, well, Kyler Gordon needs a position other than nickel corner. There's your other position, right? I really think we are going to see him get reps at safety, and he's going to be the do-it-all guy. He got a big contract from this team. Dennis Allen has made his name very abundant in the media a number of times leading up to training camp. I fully expect Kyler Gordon is the weapon X that Dennis Allen wants in that secondary because he can do both and play inside on the nickel. I think because of everything he can do, they felt comfortable saying, you know what, we're just going to carry 4 true safeties, and we're going to have another position. It's going to be called secondary player, and it's just going to be Kyler Gordon because that's really how it feels right now.
Yeah, that feels about right. Just defensive back.
Yeah, but DB, not even a position, just DB.
Let's see, at wide receiver, get some big dog, Ja'Day Walker, man. I'll tell you what. I was one of the haters out there at first, right? I was like, he's not going to make the roster. Every year we do this, right? Every year we do this. We fall in love with the receiver who like 2 years ago, there was a guy who was like, they can't cut him. And then he made the roster, and the very next day he was released. And it was like, and I don't remember the guy's name now. There are so many guys we've done this with, but once it started kind of getting put out there, like he might be making the roster, like he tweeted something. It was kind of like, okay, that seems like it might mean something. Then I started looking into him a little more. I found his RAS score, right? It was like, okay, this dude's an athlete. This dude is like a D1 bona fide athlete. This is not some dude out of Wagner who's like has a little speed, but you don't know if he can cut. This dude has bona fide athletic traits across the board.
Yeah, SEC wide receiver playing at A&M. I mean, it's
it's
no joke, man.
And then you look at A&M's offense last year, which is utterly broken, right? Like they couldn't move the ball through the air for their life. That starts making me question, oh, maybe he was a bit more of a steal than I thought. He's only 23 years old. He didn't not get drafted or not get noticed because he's older. He might have just gotten overlooked largely through the whole process. Maybe I'm not getting my hopes up yet, but I do see the path as to like why there might be something different with this guy when you see 23 years old, extremely high-end athletic traits, went to a major D1 college at Texas A&M, but the offense was just a joke there. Since the passing offense was a major issue for the last 2 years, those were the only 2 years he was there. The year before, he was at the D2 level, and he tore stuff up pretty well at the D2 level.
Yeah, I think this Bears front office has made it clear that they don't fear guys that jump from D2 to D1. And we're seeing a lot of them, right? Isaac Tesla is a good example of that. Moving up from the good old what is that? The Glacier League, I think it is, up there in Michigan in D2. Yeah, he was up at Hillsdale or something like that. And they're in that D2 conference, and sure shit, he balls out at Arkansas, and he's a high pick by the Lions. I think Walker, they probably felt comfortable, right? That Tyson Bagent, right? We talk about, his new contract, and he was a D2 standout. There was good players at the D2 level, and they probably said, hey, you know what? Maybe this is just opportunity for him. Like you said, Q, their offense sucked. They couldn't move the football. You can't get it to him. So we really don't know what he fully is yet. And they were willing to take a risk on him. And I'll tell you what, man, he balled out. And then, of course, that last game and that last drive, becoming the guy and making a couple spectacular catches is a good way to get yourself noticed and ultimately on an NFL roster.
Well, and the final factor that I forgot to mention, the dude was a standout special teamer at Texas A&M. And I'm not talking about kick punt returner. I'm talking about coverage units. He has I want to say 2 blocked field goals in his college career. So
that's awesome.
He adds extra value from that aspect. And that was the final piece where I was like, he just might be making this roster because he brings all that to the table. It's not just a guy who, we all love to watch. It's not Tanner Gentry out there doing stuff in the preseason, but has never played special teams in his life and is an average athlete.
Tanner Gentry. You're getting into my nostalgia now, Q. But you're 100% correct, man. Again, it's you hear these coaches talk all the time when you hear kids ask them what's the best way to get to the NFL? Bro, be good at special teams because you can only carry 53 guys. These guys have to be good special teamers. You need guys that can help you in that facet of the game. You have a bad special teams unit, you're going to lose a lot of football games. I can promise you that. Doesn't matter what level you're at. I bet you Hightower was like, he can play special teams.
Mm-hmm.
We know his film there. Maybe that was the reason they gave him the tryout, right? Because the special teams got him noticed, and then they realized, holy shit, he's actually a good receiver too.
I could only find one draft profile on this guy, and that was posted on Twitter by Emery Hunt, who does like 500 of them. That's how deep in he was in the muck, where it's like the only way this guy probably could have gotten noticed was by a special teams coach out there. So, I think you're right. I bet you he's Hightower's guy who he was like, as a UDFA, we got to get this guy because no one even knows he exists outside, except for maybe some other special teams coaches.
Yeah. And it just so happens he's a pretty damn good receiver too, man. And again, you need to find those as a front office and a coaching staff. You need to find those guys that surprise people. I mean, look at the Baltimore Ravens. They kept 3 undrafted free agents on their 53 man. I think with the amount of movement that is happening from the lower levels to the upper levels, I think you're going to see this more and more, man, where these undrafted guys, because there's just so many players now for you to look at, and the talent level at every level is better than ever before. You're going to have to find these diamonds in the rough, and it's cool to see when these type of guys can make an NFL roster.
Yeah. Now, outside of that, we already talked some Devin Duvernay. I do think he will be back here because then you're talking 6 wide receivers. I think is a fair room. That's 5 feels a little light generally, but especially when you only have 3 tight ends, which we will get to here. Let's see, tight ends. When you're only carrying 3 tight ends, it feels like 5 wide receivers does run a little too light. So at tight end, you got Cole Kmet, Durham Smythe, and Colson Loveland, which was pretty much expected. We're talking chalk there, but I think that getting that 6 wide receiver back on the roster will be a priority here. Agreed
wholeheartedly there, and I think I agree with the tight end room, man. Durham Smythe was an early signing for them. It was clear they wanted him as kind of that third blocking tight end, somebody that Ben Johnson has familiarity with from their days together in Miami. And of course, your shiny new toy and your old reliable at tight end and Kmet and Loveland are certainly going to be in there. So chalk as chalk gets, man. This was the only other position outside of safety where I was like, yeah, no surprise there.
Okay. And then let's see, did we running back? We still got it running back. We don't got to talk quarterback, but
perhaps the most fascinating room.
Yeah. Now, I'm missing someone here. Because he's on or no.
Brittain Brown?
No, I'm missing Travis Homer.
Yes.
Why am I missing Travis Homer here? Oh, because I had him going to IR. That's why. Wait, is he rostered or did he get put on IR? I think he did get put on IR.
Maybe.
I think he did. Let me take a look at that. But Ron, do you have any thoughts on the Bears' initial roster here?
In terms of running backs, man, this is pretty much the group I expected. I think the health of Roschon and Monangai is in a better spot than people anticipated. And I'm really excited to see who gets carries behind Swift. But I'll tell you what, man, maybe more than ever, this is the year where DeAndre Swift can be the dude and get every opportunity to be that guy, because there's a lot of inexperience and uncertainty behind him, and maybe they'll find something with Roschon or Monangai. We saw Jamal Williams carve out a hell of a role in the Ben Johnson offense as a short yardage back. Maybe Roschon can be that guy and Monangai can spell the other two. I think I'm fine with this room. I think this is a room too where you can maybe find somebody during the season when it's all said and done, if you have to boost the depth a little bit.
So Travis Homer is on IR. He's out at least 4 games.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, Roshan's got to be he's got to be getting back on the field here soon. If he's not, you are really walking a narrow path here of this gets really scary really quick if Roshan isn't back healthy, or you have another move up your sleeve. I mean, frankly, if they were up there all night eating Lou Malnati's or Portillo's or whatever they had, and their only things they walked away were the 2 guys they picked up on waivers, I have some questions with this running back room where it is. I bet you they're working the phone still on running backs and trying to get a guy who really fits what they want to do, because I have a hard time trusting Roshan Johnson to stay healthy after 2 years of him consistently being banged up. And I just don't want to count on just Swift and Monangai. I think you have to be looking for another body here somehow, some way.
I'm ready for Jamal Williams to be a Chicago Bear Q.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I do think they like Swift more than has been let on. But also, last year was one of the first times we've seen Swift truly be a lead back and stay healthy. The last time, I mean, I guess you can say he did it in Philly. The first quarter of the season, he wasn't truly the lead guy, but then it was kind of a committee. But then he became the lead guy after an injury, I believe, if I remember correctly. But I don't know. I don't know how much I like him handling that big a workload for the second year in a row and trusting that with Roshan Johnson as your primary backup or Kyle Monangai as your primary backup, just because I like Monangai. You like Monangai. Guy was a 7th round pick.
Sure. Yeah, 7th round pick, though, that I think just because of the depth of running back in this draft, he'd probably be a 4 or 5 in most other years. But neither here nor there. I completely agree, Q. I think, Swift is ready to be that guy, but they're going to need to find something from somewhere. And either it's going to be something in the next, I'll call it 4 days. We're recording as of Wednesday. We'll say by Sunday. Or maybe we're going to be surprised by one of these 2 that are listed on this roster. Maybe there's something that we haven't seen yet, right? So I think there's still a lot of what if with the running back position, but it's going to be a healthy dose. I mean, I know a lot of people poo-poo DeAndre Swift, but he was, 1,300 all-purpose yards a season ago as the dude in a largely catastrophic offense at points during the year.
Yeah.
I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I took Swift in my fantasy draft last week. I
got him on dynasty teams, man.
Yeah. I do think that he's going to be better than people expect, but I just really love him to not have to handle as much workload as it's looking like he's going to have to, because I don't think he's built for it.
Yeah, completely fair, man. I think that's a completely fair concern about the running back room.
Well, Ron, any final thoughts on the roster before we close this thing out?
Q, my final thoughts is everybody that's yelling and screaming at this right now saying, but what about the quarterback room? There's no surprises there. Tyson Bagent just got paid. Caleb Williams is the guy, whether you like it or not. And Case Keenum was brought in for a reason. He's the veteran old-timer that knows the NFL. And it's a good room. I think overall, I think the roster's good. I think it's interesting. I'm just ready for football. Now that the 53-mans are set, we're going to see more movement across the league. It's going to happen. Q, a guy that you and I both liked, was just claimed by the team in your backyard with the Eagles. It's going to be fun to see some more of the movement, and I'm ready for football, Q. I'm ready. I'm chomping at the bit.
You talking Willie Lampkin right now?
I am talking Willie Lampkin right now.
Willie Lampkin.
I do too, dude. I'll tell you what. I found some preseason pregame TikTok of him doing warm-up stuff with the Rams, and I just watching his footwork and stuff, and I was like, it's hard not to like this guy. I know he's really undersized, but you gotta respect it.
Dude, I had to beat my draft grade down on him. It was just like his range. I just had to keep telling myself the range. He just can't cover ground. The range.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be like, this dude is so
He does everything.
good. He's
But he-
so good. I hope he makes us all look like idiots. I really do.
I do too. And he would be like the type of player though that like goes down in NFL history as like, man, you remember that Willie Lampkin? He was so tiny, but he was like a decent offensive lineman. Like maybe he's never a true starter, but like he's a reliable backup or something.
Oh, he went to the Eagles. He's gonna be a Hall of Famer. Book it.
Dude, could you imagine? Could you imagine the hilarity of having like if Cam Jurgens got hurt, having Willie Lampkin next to those freaking freight trains on that offensive line? Hilarious.
Who would cover for a better? You know, like where would he? Does he have a better chance to succeed?
Just make the movie now.
Yeah, Ron, let's get out of here the only way we know how.
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.